Welcome to Notable Approvals. I am attorney Amanda Shaffer. Before we get to our case today, I just want to quickly note that if you've been watching this week or last week, I said that our next Q&A discussion on naturalization is going to be next Thursday, November 5th. We actually decided to move it to Thursday, November 12th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time because next week it'll be a little bit hectic with the presidential election. So don't forget to vote. And don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook so you don't miss any of our lives. And I will be posting next week some more information about that Q&A. So today we're talking about another VAWA case. And this case I wanted to talk about because it's notable with regards to the fact that it was granted based really on extreme cruelty. There was no actual physical abuse, and because there wasn't much documentary evidence. So the client is a native and citizen of Romania, and give you a little background about her because it's relevant for the abuse that occurred later on. She unfortunately has been the victim of abuse by many different abusers, starting when she was very little. Her mother was married to an alcoholic who abused her, her sisters, her mother. He died. She got remarried and married another alcoholic who continued the abuse. So when she was 17 years old, she decided she needed to get out of the house. She left the house, she left Romania, went to Greece. She stayed in Greece for 14 years while she was working, and then the Greek economy collapsed. And she said, all right, well, I can't go back to Romania and be victim of abuse again, so I'm going to get a visa to come to the US. Now, one asterisk here is that when she applied for the visa to come to the US, she lied on the application and said, I think she said she was married. It was either married or had kids. I'm pretty sure she said she was married, and she wasn't. And I'll get back to that problem shortly. So she came to the US in 2013. She started working for kind of like a home health aide. She would care for this lady. She became very close with this lady and her family, and ended up living with them, and still does to this day right now. In 2017, she met and married her US citizen husband. This was the first person she even dated, really seriously dated in the US, because she was always working. And she really, I think part of the reason she was drawn to this guy is because he was like a father figure to her and she didn't have one. He was 30 years older than her. She didn't seem to care, but a lot of times when you see an age gap that big, it has something to do with an issue with fathers or the male figures in your life, which was her case, as I just explained. So, everything, of course, was great at first. They get married, and she moves in, they get married, and then things start to go south. And it all started when the lady that she was caring for, that at this point she considered family, was diagnosed with cancer. And she was really distraught. And her husband knew that she had suffered abuse in the past, that she still deals with PTSD. And instead of trying to comfort her and help her through it, what he said to her was, you need to get a job. You're going to be a burden now. You need to get a job. And of course, that triggered her PTSD. That was not very helpful at all. And then one night he actually did try to hit her. He never actually hit her, and she called the police. But when the police got there, instead of arresting him, he convinced them that she was mentally ill and drunk, and they didn't arrest her, but they brought her to a psychiatric hospital. She was eventually released, but it didn't end there. He continued to threaten her with deportation, continued to demean her, talk down to her, and the extreme cruelty continued to get worse. She even ended up in the hospital because of migraines and depression 1 or 2 times. And then, without her knowledge, he kicked her out of the apartment, he lived in a building with a security guard, told the security guard, don't let her upstairs. So she came home one night, tried to go into her apartment. The security guard wouldn't let her. And she's like, I'm not leaving. I live here. So he called the cops. This time she was arrested. And she was given disorderly persons offense in New Jersey. That's like a violation. It's not a big deal. It's just, it still exists. It's still an arrest. So, and they also did bring her again to the psychiatric hospital to get evaluated. And her husband did file for her green card. And when she moved out, they had a lawyer at the time that was like one of his friends. No one changed her address, so she wasn't getting notifications. She came to us shortly after he filed for divorce against her. And at the time, as far as we knew, they had just had their marriage interview. It didn't go well, but they didn't have a decision on the I-485. So as far as we knew, it was still pending. And when we looked online, it still said pending. So we told her, the good news is this: if we can get the VAWA completed quickly, then we can keep your I-485 open. You won't have to refile it. You won't have to pay a new fee. Your work permit will still be valid. So we started compiling everything. And then when we were ready to file it, she still hadn't gotten notice, even though we did a change of address. I was like, let's just make sure that it hasn't been denied. The online case status system is not always correct, but it's a place to start. So we looked, and it did in fact say it was denied. So it's like, okay, well, that means we're gonna have to refile a bit. Let's do the VAWA first, because, you know, it's expensive, there's a lot to do, and we wanna get the VAWA filed before they put you in removal proceedings. So we did that. And like I said, that one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this case is that there wasn't much documentary evidence. In fact, as evidence of the marriage, all we had was her detailed affidavit, psychiatrist letter, 2 friends letter, and a bunch of pictures with detailed explanations of who, what, when, where, and why. And the abuse evidence there was equally lacking. Her detailed affidavit, some additional affidavits from people who firsthand witnessed the abuse, the arrest report to back up what she was saying, and the psychiatrist letter. And if you've ever seen me talk about these cases before, I've mentioned how there is a certain like hierarchy in terms of which evidence is the most helpful and which evidence is the least helpful. And generally speaking, things like photos, letters from friends and families, those are on the bottom of the hierarchy, because anyone can take a picture with anyone, right? If you ask your mom to write a letter, your mom is going to write whatever you tell her to write, or your friend's going to write whatever you tell her to write. So it's harder for USCIS to trust those things. But when that's what all you have, that's what you deal with. And that's when the affidavit becomes incredibly important, because we went through, we detailed in great detail their entire relationship, from the second they met to getting married to things going bad, why she didn't call the cops, or why she did call the cops, and what happened, why they don't have joint marriage evidence. And that's something we had to really make sure to explain, because this was a situation we hear a lot in abusive relationships, where the abusive spouse would be like, yeah, we'll go get our joint bank account tomorrow. Yeah, I'm on my way to the bank, and then never shows up, things like that. So we explained all of that. She wasn't able to get the hospital records, but we were able to get a third person who knew she was there at the time to write a letter about it. So overall, there wasn't as much documentary evidence, there wasn't physical abuse, but thanks to our detailed affidavit and the fact that this man really treated her so horribly, extremely cruel, we were able to get it approved. Unfortunately, that's not the end of the story here. And I hope that sometime soon I'll be doing an update on this case to tell you she now has her green card. And the reason we're not done yet is because, like I said earlier, that when she applied for her visa, she lied on the visa application so she could get the visa. And USCIS, of course, knew about it. And they did file some type of waiver when she filed for the marriage petition with her ex-husband. Oh, I did forget to mention one thing. She did get a divorce based on abuse, which is helpful. It's not required for a case like this, but when you have less evidence, especially, having a divorce based on abuse really does help. So she did lie on the application, like I said. So now we need to file a 601 waiver of inadmissibility for fraud and misrepresentation. The good news for her is that when you file for one of these waivers based on an approved VAWA petition, you do not need to show an extreme hardship to a parent or a U.S. citizen or permanent resident parent or spouse. She's able to show the extreme hardship to herself. And we think, a pretty good case for her. We're working on it now. We hope to get it filed soon. And we will file that along with her green card application. She does have a work permit from the approved VAWA, but we'll file for another one. Travel document, we wouldn't recommend in this situation, because whenever somebody has like any type of fraud in the past, if they could try to detain her on her way back in the country. So just wait till you get your green card before going anywhere. But yeah, I mean, we're very hopeful that her case is going to get approved. And, this is a great example, again, of a VAWA case that had not too much documentary evidence, and how the explanation, the detailed affidavit, really filled in all the gaps here, and how you can prove a case based on extreme cruelty without any actual physical violence. So that is all today for notable approvals. Again, our Q&A discussion on naturalization is not going to be next Thursday. It'll be Thursday, November 12th at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So like us, follow us on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn and all those things so you don't miss any more. Thanks for watching.